It will be 20 years in June when the first Blu-ray disc players launched on the market, after being developed for nearly a couple years by that point, mainly since the beginning of 2003. Now, 20 years later, does the Blu-ray disc format still hold up as the biggest physical media for collectors, or is now streaming taking over its responsibilities? We'll talk about how Blu-ray disc was formed and how it was invented in this special edition of the Internet Tech Report. Hello, and welcome to the second episode of the Internet Tech Report here on Horizions. Today's format is to originally talk about the Blu-ray format. I was going to cover CES, but we're going to save that for the next couple of videos, mainly due to the fact that CES is still going on at this point. As such, I want to give some time before that wraps up, before I cover that. Anyways, yes, Blu-ray is about 20 years old. It will be 20 years old in June, mainly with the first person launching around that time. So anyways, let's talk about the Blu-ray format and how we got here, basically. As such, we need to backtrack about 10 years to around 1997. The DVD player format has just launched in North America. It had launched in Japan in 1996, at the tail end of 1996, with Warner Home Video, of course, being one of the first major people to jump onto the DVD format, and later on, like 20th Century Fox, Disney, Universal, and all the other studios jumped in the fray by the end of 1997, with MGM UA, of course, and a few other early notable distributors at the time. Of course, DVD at the time was only 480i. It could only handle 480i standard definition. Of course, widescreen TVs were starting to become popular around the beginning of the 2000s. It overtook VHS by 2003, DVD that is. And mainly by that point, most people had a decent sized CRT. But Blu-ray was already being developed by several key manufacturers, such as Panasonic, Sony, and a few other companies, including, I think, Philips at the time as well. Anyways, Blu-ray would launch in 2006 amidst of the HD-DVD format war. Of course, HD-DVD was being pushed by Toshiba and a few other companies at the time. And of course, Blu-ray, of course, at the time, having the likes of Sony, Disney, and 20th Century Fox being around, while the other big six studios at the time, Paramount, Universal, and Warner Brothers, were either neutral or had allegiance with HD DVD. Of course, I'm not going to get into the format war pretty much in this video, because that will be a video for its own person being at the time, which is not in the works yet, but eventually we'll get there. Anyways, Blu-ray is now 20 years old. An invention of 4K Ultra HD nearly 10 years ago this very year. We'll see what is next in store for Blu-ray. Now, Blu-ray, on the other hand, has been second fiddle to DVD. Not in terms of picture quality, but in terms of how most people buy stuff. Still, DVD is still being used very evenly, although most people don't use DVDs anymore. I understand why people refuse to buy DVDs anymore, because most people prefer streaming, like either on Netflix, Disney Plus, or whatever you have in your neck of the woods. Now, we see ourselves 20 years down the road. Finally, though, let's take a look at how Blu-ray came to be, and finally we'll discuss how we are at this current time. So let's backtrack to 2003. We backtracked to the year 2000, actually, as the first BD format prototypes were revealed at this time by Sony Electronics. At the time, they had just launched the critical, massive success of the PlayStation 2, which would soon become the largest gaming console to be shipped of all time, and become the dominant gaming console of that generation, and still remains the largest selling video game console of all time. Meanwhile, after a couple of more prototypes would be invented over the next couple of years, the first prototypes finally started happening in 2003 with the first prototype player. It continued to be developed by Sony and a few other manufacturers, finally being released on the 20th of June 2006. Although HDVD was first to be available to the market, being launched on the 18th of April 2006, Blu-ray immediately was more superior with better technology and sound. Of course, Pioneer, and a few other manufacturers already had joined Team Blue by this point and was already a massive decency. Blockbuster by this point, by 2007, had already shipped their sites to Blu-ray, and soon, by 2008, the final nail in the coffin for HD-DVD was made, after a few other companies finally joined the Blu-ray camp. By 2016, 44% of American households had a Blu-ray player, thanks to massive support for people using their software. Now, with 4K Ultra HD also being in the fray, 4K Ultra HD being launched in 2016, allowing for the first batch of movies being made in 4K becoming available on the market, mainly from Fox and a few other manufacturers at the time. But now, Blu-ray is now 20 years old, and where do we stand? Blu-ray still exists, and many people still collect Blu-rays as their go-to form of media. Although Netflix and Disney Plus may be usable for easy access and to jump straight into the movie, it looks like mostly people still stick with Blu-ray. And thank you for watching this special episode of the Internet Tech Report. It is still our second episode, so we're still working out the quirks and stuff. Anyways, that does it from the Internet Tech Report, and until then, the Internet Tech Report room is closed for this evening, but don't worry, we'll be back sometime in the near future. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you guys later.